Okay, we're going to get started here, and if you want to grab any food or drinks or whatever, we'll get going. We'll get the doors going here in just a second. So again, tonight, I think Terry was making beef stroganoff or something like that. Yeah, so God bless Terry for doing that. He's quite a cook, man. We appreciate him doing that, man. So anyway, I don't have any other, no sign-ups, anything or anything going around, Monica, or anything? Am I good? Announcements? No? Okay. Let's pray then. Father, we do thank you, Lord, for this evening that you have given us to come together and study. And we pray that the Holy Spirit would fill us to illuminate us to your word so we can live it out and understand it. And so, Father, bless our time now. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we're going to pick up on rewards, and we're getting to the reward of Thyatira, and that is to overcome the issue that's going on in Thyatira. And we've talked about this in terms of it having an application to 95 AD of what was going on in that particular situation where you had a woman inside the church that was acting in a Jezebel spirit to undermine the church and cause people to commit idolatry and sexual immorality because of the guilds that they were involved in. And that was the compromise a lot of people made, that if you're going to be part of a guild, you had to do these things. And so she's probably in there telling them somewhat of the idea that, look, God understands your heart. God understands these. You know that these are not idols, but you got to do what you got to do to protect your job, protect your family. And so she would lead them into that situation, just kind of like what we talked about last week, into compromising with the excuse of providing for you and your family and whatnot. Okay, so that something like that was going on in 95 AD. Then when you go to the historical aspect of the Church of Thyatira, obviously that refers to what we call the pornocracy era of from the whole era where the Catholic Church begins from like 600 AD to about 1517 with the Protestant Reformation. And so you're smack dab in the middle of the Middle Ages. You're smack dab in medieval times, if you want to call that, and the Dark Ages, and really the pornocracy of all that was going on there. And instead of it being a woman, the woman, in effect, in that era is the whore of Babylon entering into Christendom and producing idolatry. And again, you have to remind yourselves of the Old Testament story of Jezebel, Queen Jezebel, Ahab's wife, what she was doing. She was the first one to introduce foreign gods into Israel's life as a nation. Now, Israel had worshipped, the golden calf and the calves that I think Jeroboam had set up. They had two calves. But they were in reference to Yahweh. They weren't in reference to a foreign god. They were always in reference to Yahweh. Even the golden calf of Aaron in the desert was in reference to Yahweh. So Jezebel is the first to bring outside influence, outside gods into the nation of Israel. And that's what is starting to happen in the church at this time, is you have a false religion, Babylon being that religion, infiltrating into the church. And we know that we looked at the parable last week of Matthew 13, that the woman in Matthew 13 represents the Jezebel, not Jezebel, the harlot who's introducing leaven into the three meals, that being Orthodox, Roman Catholicism, and Protestantism. And so she is leavening the whole loaf. So again, just one more application to that. The Jezebel spirit and the whore of Babylon really is at work right now on a global scale and creating a false religion for the masses to worship. And it's a supra-religion that covers all and includes all except, biblical Christianity and Israel. And what you have to see when you look at the whore of Babylon is what I was saying last night at a thing we were having down south in Huntington Beach, is it's an inversion. She does an inversion of God and his principles. See, everything's the opposite. what she does. So she inverts everything, and she misuses religion for her benefit to be like a glue that holds people together, a common element. So that's happening right now, and whether you call it wokeism or whether you call it whatever, cultural Marxism, neo-Marxism, postmodernism, all the isms out there, she is a blanket for all of that. In communism, too, in Marxism, they would say they're atheistic ideologies, but they're really not. They're religions. Communism is a religion. So is Marxism is a religion. Socialism is a religion. They just don't worship the God of the Bible. They worship the God of materialism and whatnot. And so, she's out there and she's working now, and she's involved. And I don't want to take too much time with that, but that's another aspect of her. Okay. Now, when you do a personal application, obviously I try to warn people of the whore of Babylon and what she's doing with the agenda, but then you have to understand that the Jezebel spirit can come to you in a personal way. And that's what a lot of people miss. They don't know how to spot it in their own personal lives. Jezebel spirit is not a charismatic idea. I mean, not the mentality, but the ideology is coming from the Church of Thyatira. And just like you look at this in a historical standpoint, you look at it in a church history standpoint, you have to look at it at a personal level as well for your personal application. And you have to address, okay, what is the Jezebel spirit then? What is it? What does it look like? And how if I see it, do I confront it? How do I deal with it? And I'm going to talk about that tonight. So I want to go through verse 21 through 22 before I get to that. Let me get to that first then, and then we'll get to here. So on a personal level, what will happen to spot a Jezebel spirit is you need to be looking for a lot of markers, okay? You should be familiar, obviously, with the story of Jezebel to begin with, to understand the markers. But when you analyze Jezebel and you analyze what this lady is doing in the church and you put it all together, you get a kind of a package of what to spot. So this kind of person, it's typically a female, sometimes they can be males, but typically the Jezebel spirit is a female. And it's usually given the idea of a female because of the seductiveness that the harlot would do, a prostitute would do. But it can be males as well, I would say. But in this situation, historically, it was a female. More than likely, it'll be a female, more than likely. I haven't seen too many males like this, although they do exist. But it's more likely a female. So here's what they look like. And buyer beware. They're natural leaders, by the way. They actually can get a lot of things done. So when you're around them, they're a female leader, okay? They're sometimes too large and in charge, but a lot of times they cover up their large and in chargeness with competency. And so don't be fooled by competency. If they're competent, then you'll notice that they're competent, but the Jezebel spirit will try to promote their competency. They will try to tell you how good they are and show you how good they are, and many times they are very good. They are very smart, they are very capable, and they do get a lot of things done. But the natural leader in them, they'll try to hide it as much as they can what I mean by that is they'll pretend not to be taking over, but they will. So a lot of these people volunteer without even being asked. And they jump in where they're not asked to be jumped in to, and they'll just take over. And you might think, like, if you're needing help and stuff, that would be a good thing for you, but it actually is not a good thing when people just jump in and start doing things without being approved of. Because, like, let's say so the Jezebel spirit will come into a church, for instance, and I'll give you an example. Like, we have a nominating committee. So each worker that we are going to approve comes before the nominating committee, and it includes me, and includes people that are associate pastors and people on our staff that kind of understand and know people and understand ministry, and those people will be approved by the nominating committee. But those people that have the Jezebel spirit, they won't wait for to be approved. They'll just jump in without being approved. They'll jump in without being asked. They'll jump in and start volunteering themselves. So these types of individuals are not wallflowers. They are not ones that sit on the sidelines. They totally get involved, but they have an ulterior motive for getting involved. And I'll explain that ulterior motive in just a bit. So you think, well, leadership is a good thing. Yeah, but not in this case. In this case, there's an ulterior motive. So then what they'll do is whatever situation they find themselves in, it could be at a job, but they could be at a church, they could be at a Bible study, they could be at a ministry that they're getting involved in. They will find the people of influence, okay? They don't really care about people that have no influence, and they will find the person of influence and seek to get credibility with that person of influence, right? And then what they'll do is they'll try to bond with them. And they'll seek to bond with them. And they are good enough in their manipulation techniques to learn how to bond to people. And I'm not talking about it in a bond in a sexual way or anything, but bonding to where you actually like the person because they become familiar to you. Like some techniques of bonding is like if you were going to go to lunch with a friend of yours, or not a friend, but an acquaintance, and you want to get close, you would ask them questions that what makes them tick, what kind of hobbies do you like, what do you, what's your favorite meal, what's your favorite team, what's your this, what that, and you find those commonalities that they like, and then you use that to bond with them. Now, that's a good thing, right? Because you want to get to know somebody and you want to learn about them, and that way you can get connected. But they use those techniques in order to manipulate. So they'll find out what your favorite team is. They'll find out what your likes are. They'll find out what your hobbies are. They'll find out all those kinds of things, right? They'll find different things like that and then capitalize on that and use that against you. And you will think that they like you. Okay, you will think that they like you because they're familiar with you. And just because they're familiar with you doesn't mean they like you. They pretend to like you, but they're going to use you. That's the point. They're going to use you. And so, again, they're going to find the person of influence. Again, the way you can tell them is how do they treat people with no influence? Okay? They won't hang around with people with no influence. If like for instance in the church, if they're not somebody that's on stage or somebody that's influential in the church, you think they're going to waste time with them? No, they will not. They won't even give them a second look. They won't even say hello. They just pass on by. And obviously that's a telltale sign is how people treat those who have no platform, those who are on the lowest end of the rung. You can tell it in probably if you go to lunch with them. It's how they treat waiters and waitresses. Those people that have no influence in society, watch how they treat them. But if it's a big wig, if it's a big shot, hey, this is a rich and powerful person, or this is a politician, or this is that, all of a sudden they're right there in the front, right there. Okay, they're up there in the front, and they're, doing everything they can to bond to that individual, and so it's a very deceptive thing. There's no doubt about that. So this person then, the ulterior motive starts popping out, and what they're doing is they're seeking leadership and they're seeking authority. Is what they're trying to do. And they worm their way to do that. That's why they're wanting to get with people who have influence, and they want to get with people that have some type of power or money. If it's a boss, if it's the CEO, if it's whatever, they're going to try to self-promote themselves in that leadership and promote themselves. So they don't want to work from the very bottom on the way up. They don't want to prove themselves. Like I was preaching on Sunday, you're faithful in a few things, Christ will put you in charge of many things. And the way it works in ministry is you're faithful in a few things, and then you earn your reputation of we can rely on you for little things, and therefore we can put you in charge of more things. That's how you earn your credibility. These people don't want to earn any credibility whatsoever. They want to go straight to the top. And the way they go straight to the top is by bonding to the leader. That's how they go straight to the top. They don't earn their stripes. They go to the top, and by bonding. And so, menial jobs to them is not what they want to do. And so I've had a lot of people approach me throughout the years, and you can spot them pretty quick. They don't want to start, like ushering or something like that. They want to start, I want to be your new associate pastor. That's how they start. Okay, that's how the conversation starts. I want to be your women's leader. Who are you? What is your name? I don't know who you are. What? And so what you start really when you deal with that person, and I can spot them, is they want to jump all the way to the top. Now, it's one thing if you're dealing with someone with the experience and, hey, I worked in this ministry for 30 years and stuff like that. That's they have a track record. But someone who doesn't have a track record but wants to jump and pole vault to the top is insane. And you should be able to spot that immediately if they do that. Now, again, they might do this at your employment or whatever, but they're going to try to get the highest positions by bonding to the leader, okay? So their issue is self-promotion. Self-promotion. So these people are very skilled at promoting themselves. They'll show you how good they are. They'll prove to you how good they are. And they're very, very capable. They can get things done. They could make it happen. And this is what frees up the leader sometimes to ignore that. Because the leader typically in any ministry or at an office or at a job, if that's the CEO or whatever, the supervisor, they're looking for employees that can take more loads off of them, okay? That's common, right? I want to be able to have a highly efficient individual that can work under me and take some of my load off of my plate. Everybody would say that's a natural. They capitalize on that. And so they will take it from you and then run with it. Okay? But they're taking that from you if you give it to them. They take from that, and then they use that to self-promote and use that to form their own following. And I'll get to that in a bit. So what ends up happening with these types of individuals as well is they provide inside information because they go to the top. And so when they go to the top, they're able to gain inside information. They're able to get confidential information they would not normally have. And it's because they've pole vaulted themselves up, and now they're hearing things that the average person wouldn't normally hear, that the customer wouldn't hear. And they're hearing things on the inner workings of things, and that's what they want to be. They want to be on the inside. Now, why do they want to be on the inside? Because when you're trying to gain a following, to follow you, if you have nothing to impress anybody with, the only thing you can impress them with is information. And so they want to get on the inside, typically to get information. And then when they get information becomes a very powerful resource for them because they know a lot. And so then, because they know a lot, people seem to give them automatic credibility because they're on the inside and they know the inner workings of what's going on and this and that. And so you can actually get a following if you have inside information. Now, let me make a segue to an application that's going on with current events and stuff like that. There are a lot of people in the prophecy world that are tinfoil hat brigades. There's no doubt about that. And because I travel in that circle, I know who the tinfoil hat brigade is. And these are the people who have conspiracy theories and there's no basis in fact, there's no truth, there's no evidence in what they're saying. And they traffic a lot of times in our circles. And it upsets me because I'm trying to be more conservative in my eschatology and the way I talk about current events and stuff and not get down rabbit holes that have no basis in fact. But there's a lot of people that gravitate to that. Now, what ends up happening with a lot of them, and I'm not saying they have a Jezebel spirit, but I want to give you an application to this about inside information. Going down rabbit holes and into conspiracy theories, makes people feel important. And then they feel that they have information to share. And so they share that information, but that information is incorrect. It's wrong. But they want to pretend that they have an inside track on information that no one else has. And so they'll have special apps, and they'll have special this and special that. And I saw this on Facebook. I saw this on X. I saw this on Telegram. I saw this on blank, whatever the inside dope is coming from. And what ends up happening when you're using social media is that stuff is not verified. So some dude could be in his backyard saying he saw a Nephilim walking through the backyard in Las Vegas, right? And people will believe it. Because that really happened, by the way. Someone really spun a yarn, and people, oh yeah, there was a Nephilim in someone's backyard in Vegas. It's stupid. I mean, just off the chart, dumb, no verification, but people will believe it, or, you know, whatever the issue might be. And what ends up happening is they attract a person that also wants an inside track on things. And really, at the basis of that, their following is based on fear, because the person feels that if they have the inside track on something, then it will satisfy or soothe their fear about how they feel about the world. And for them, information makes them feel secure, but it's a false security because it's not real information. It's false information. It brings no security, really. It's a false security. Only the Bible will bring real security. Okay, but rabbit holes and theories that works with people like QAnon or Blue Anon or any of those kinds of conspiracy cults, that becomes attractant. Now, here's what I find out. In our circle, we have that going on even with the people that follow us. There's people out there that will go down rabbit holes, and it's all it comes down to is wanting inside information. And it's kind of a Gnostic thing where I have secret knowledge and no one else has, but none of it's verified. And so, again, I'm just giving an application for, don't be so eager to get something on Instagram or something on some digital app because it's not verifiable. So somebody may say it, but it's not happening. We've had situations where, like, we've had people say in Israel, oh, bombs are going off and this and that, and like World War III is getting ready to happen. And yet we've had people on the ground that I've talked to that were on the ground and saying, nothing's happening. I don't know why that guy's posting stuff and saying things are happening because I'm standing right here. And I don't know what to think about that. I don't know what to think about individuals who live in Israel, know it's not happening, and then go out and say there's bombs going off left and right when somebody I know in my circle is standing right over there saying it's not happening. Wow. I don't know why anyone would do that. Why would you lie? Just because no one else lives in Israel? Why would you lie like that? All this inside information stuff, it's a game. Look, stick with what you can verify, okay? You can't verify it with at least 2 or 3 news sources that are legitimate, then don't put it out there. Do not put it out there because you're going to cause yourself problems, and then it reveals that you're just simply doing this for the clickbait, and you're just doing this for a following, or you want some type of inside track or something like that. But anyway, that's a segue. But anyway, let's go back to Jezebel. So Jezebel thrives on inside information. Okay, so what she does is she goes into the office, she goes into the business. I don't care, it could be Lowe's, it could be Home Depot, it could be Walmart, it could be a church, it could be anything, and they will go there and try to get inside information. And that's how they get power, is inside information. Okay? But the problem is, once they have the information, the Jezebel spirit has a blackmail spirit to her. And so with the information they have, they use it to blackmail people. They hold information over them because they know information. And so they'll make comments to people about something that they know, and it becomes a form of blackmail. Like, I'll reveal this if, you don't do what I want you to do. I'll reveal this, okay? So that's how they use information. They use information to blackmail people, okay? That's why you have to be, when you're dealing with this individual, they're a very dangerous individual. These are the people that will take you to court, okay? In the end, they'll try to be your friend, but at the end, they'll take you to court, okay? It's no joke with these people. They're real, they're in the church, they're in your businesses, they're in the society, and they're demonically driven, okay? The other thing is they will try to seek to neutralize the male authority wherever they go. So they will seek out the male authority. If the male authority is weak, they got them. If the male authority is hard, then they have a hard work, and it's going to take longer to work on them. So that's, if it's in your office, if it's in the church, if it's Home Depot, it doesn't matter. They will find out where the male authority is and seek to undermine that authority. They will neutralize it as much as they can. Now, they can neutralize it in many ways. Sexual enticement, there's all kinds of things like that. They can bring about physical illness. They can bring about discouragement to them. They can bring financial misconduct to them in different ways. They can instill doubt in the person's decisions, so the male leader starts doubting what they're thinking. And really, discouragement is probably the biggest thing, because discouragement takes away people's hope. And once you take away a person's hope, you can pretty much use them. And so she seeks to take away their hope. Like, it's not going to work. It's a failure. You're stupid. You're dumb. Whatever. And she'll make you feel like that, right? But the issue then becomes, when she neutralizes the male, she's seeking to bring division and chaos into the organization, into the job, into the church, into the Bible study, into wherever she's going. It's to cause division and chaos. It's not order, it's chaos. Then eventually she'll claim her own authority. Once she has inside information and she's gained a footing in some type of position at the job or wherever, they start claiming their own authority. Now, what I mean by that is, when you're in the military, you have to follow the authority lines, right? You follow that authority. But what she does is she gets in a position and then overextends her authority. She starts doing things that's not in her job description. She starts doing things that no one told her to do. And she starts moving beyond the boundaries in which you set for her, okay? So she moves beyond them. And you might think, well, this is fine because, she's taking more off your plate, but no, she's not. She's extending authority is what she's doing. She's moving. And if you don't corral this, if you don't put a boundary around it, she will take everything you will let her have, okay? And that's part of this claiming authority. Before you know it, she'll be running your whole operation. She'll be running this, she'll be running that, she'll be running this. And it may not be de jure, but it'll be definitely de facto. That's for sure. She may not even have that, but she will extend, and you will constantly start seeing yourself as reining this in. And if you have to stay on an employee or whoever in your Bible study or whatever, and you're constantly reining them in, because they overextend, you're dealing with it. Because most people, normal people, know their boundaries. They know where they end and others begin. The Jezebel spirit doesn't know where anyone ends or begins. They just continue to flow like a blob, right? They're just extending until someone tells them no. When you do tell them no, they get mad. Her goal is to control. So she's going to attack, dominate, manipulate. They'll cry a lot of times to get their way. They'll use fear tactics. They'll use rejection. And rejection tactics on men really work really well, by the way, because most men have rejection issues. And so the woman will know that the guy has a rejection issue. And so she'll make him feel like dirt and actually go through the motions of rejecting him and giving him those feelings in a way of manipulating the individual who has rejection issues. And again, I would say about 85 to 90% of males have rejection issues. So she uses that. They'll pout, they'll use guilt trips, they'll do silence, feign sickness, self-pity. Those types of things are all manipulative tactics, but they're not real, but they use them. You must understand that she hates men. Okay? That's first and foremost. And she may be married, but she hates men. There's a lot of people that are married and hate men. Whether it's going back to their father or their grandfather or their brothers or something like that, there's an insecurity with them with men. So they won't tell you this, but they do hate men. And they're married to men, and they have children with men, but they hate them. They totally hate the man. And they hate masculinity, and they hate manhood. Okay? So in her marriage, she's constantly questioning the man's decision. Constantly. She won't submit to her leadership. She pretends she submits, but she doesn't. Now, she has figured out a way to manipulate her husband into thinking that and the manipulation is to make him think that he's in control, but when he's really not. And that's the most deceptive thing you could possibly do, is to make someone think they're in control when they're really not. And the way she can do that is through rejection. She can manipulate her husband through rejection and use sex to manipulate him into that rejection mode. Because typically, the guys who have rejection issues will feel the rejection most in bed, most in sex. So she knows how to use sex to cause the rejection, the manipulation to happen in order to control him. So what the guy will think is that he'll get sex, and then he feels empowered that he's in control, but he's really not. What he just did is he succumbed to her sexual temptation, and he bought into it, and now really she's going to work around him to do what she wants him to do, because if he ever wants sex again, he's got to comply. Otherwise, she'll turn off the waterworks on him. That's how a Jezebel spirit works. Now, that's in a home. That's in a marriage, and there's plenty of that going on constantly in marriages. And people know how to really use sex to manipulate in very negative ways. So she'll do that. But at the end of the day, she can't stand male leadership. The individuals themselves are very insecure, and they're wounded. They're typically wounded narcissists. They have been wounded early in life, typically probably by a male, probably their father, probably it could be a boyfriend. It could come from molestation, it could come from rape, it could come from neglect, it could come from absentee, it could come from a death of a father, it could come from various sources of why the woman is insecure and wounded, okay? And that insecurity and that wound has never been healed, ever, and they carry it with them, and they're 35, and they're 45, and they're 55, and they're 65, and they're 75, and they're still carrying it with them. They never get really over it. They never work on their issues. And so what ends up happening is they have a love deficit. So since dad burnt them, or since their boyfriend burnt them, or since their cousin burnt them, or whoever, their brother did, or whatever male burnt them, right? They have a love deficit, and so they're working with that as an insecurity. And that love deficit causes them to do all kinds of wacky-do stuff. When you have a love deficit, you really don't know what love is anymore. You lose the ability to know what real love is, and so what love becomes to you is almost performance-based, contractual, not covenantal love. Covenantal love is totally not in this person's mind. It's contractual. So the guy she marries typically is a contractual basis that if you do good to me, I'll do good to you. And love is being good to me, and I'll be good to you. But if you're not good to me, then I won't be good to you. And so it's a performance-based contract in which the person is operating on. And there's plenty of that going on all the time in Christian marriages. I'm not saying that's because of a Jezebel, but contractual love versus covenantal love is something that a lot of people don't understand. So she's doing that on a contractual basis. So what will the house look like? What will the job look like? What will your office look like if you have this woman in your office? Well, they're going to constantly need affirmation from you. They need a constant pat on the back that you're doing great, you're doing wonderful. Oh no, I'm not that great. Oh yes, you are. And so they constantly have to be affirmed. You constantly have to be. They have to be platformed, and they constantly have to be in the spotlight in the office. You may have run into somebody like that. Now in the church, because they need constant affirmation, because it's not readily available, because people just don't go up to you and say, what a wonderful job you're doing, and that this typically doesn't happen. So how do they get affirmation if no one's coming up to them saying, you're so wonderful, you're the best thing since sliced bread, I can't believe it, you're amazing. You're like, wow. So what would you do if you can't get the verbal? Then what do you got to do? You have to platform yourself. You have to get on this stage. This is the stage you have to get on. So this is why in music, the Jezebel spirit typically infiltrates into music. Typically. Not all the time, but that's one way. Because the Jezebel spirit has to be platformed. Okay? Now, I want you to think it in your own personal life. Where's your platform at? How do they platform in your family? Well, maybe it's getting a platform with mom and dad. Or maybe it's being at your job, being in the front office and where everyone in the reception area, where everybody comes in. That's how they platform themselves. They've got to be in a public location where everyone sees them. That's the principle. They do not settle for you putting them in the back room and no one ever sees them. They can't handle that. They won't. They've got to be up front. No, it doesn't necessarily mean music. It means like the woman that came to me and said she wanted to be the women's ministry leader, and I don't know who she is. I mean, what in the world? But that's a Jezebel spirit. Why? She platformed herself. She wants the highest position, and she's never earned it, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be in music. It could be in anything. They want the highest position that gives them the most exposure on a platform. Now, a lot of guys try to do this. We've had people in our ministry that are guys trying to get on my platform. And I want to say, well, I earned my platform. You didn't. You don't get to get on my platform. I earned my platform after 20-something years in ministry. You just don't get to jump on my platform and think you can ride my coattails. And there's been men that are trying to do that, and they're no longer with us anymore. But they've had this Jezebel spirit of wanting to platform themselves. And so this is a real deal. And I need to warn you because it probably will, at some point in your life, hit you if it hasn't already hit you with a woman or somebody or an aunt or a mom or somebody. So here's the other thing. They need to be popular. So the platforming gives them a popularity. And then they have to have this acceptance and approval from people because of that. And so they eat that up, and then and then having a position gives them the ability to have people dependent on them. They love people being dependent on them, and it's the total opposite of what I'm trying to do on a Wednesday night or on a Sunday. I am trying to make you independent of me. I'm trying to make it to the point you don't need me anymore. That when you read the Bible, you can read it on your own, and you've learned so well that you can teach yourself. That's the whole goal. My goal is not to make you dependent on me. My goal is to give you as much information as I can, and you take it and use it, and become independent of me. That's the whole goal. But she doesn't want anyone independent of her. She wants people dependent on her. Not only for information, but for power based on and authority and anything that she can offer, she wants that dependency. So what you'll see is they'll have groupies around them. They will have a following around them. And it might be 5 people, it might be 12 people, it might be 30 people, I don't know. But they will have groupies around them, and those groupies are typically dependent in nature to begin with. They don't go to other independent women. They go to dependent women, and then they gather them. They gather vulnerable women, hurt women, those types, okay? They don't like dealing with another self-sufficient woman. They're very jealous of other self-sufficient women, especially if the woman has good looks and is smart. They totally can't stand that. They cannot stand a competition with another woman that is probably equally or better than them in capabilities and looks. They cannot stand that. And so they're very jealous because of their insecurities, obviously. So anyway, they're performance-based, like I mentioned, in their relationship, so they will perform very well for you. They are typically perfectionists in their attitudes, and that's why they're so good at performing, because they do a very good job. But spiritually, they're legalists. They'll strain at gnats and swallow camels, though. So while they're manipulating somebody by lying, they'll be legalistic on small little things of tithing mint, cumin, and dill. Right? They'll do those things, but ignore the weightier matters in their life. They're subtle and they're deceptive. They'll use flattery, gifts, innuendos, insinuations, and discrediting. They're proud and rebellious. They seek their agenda, and they have a rebellious spirit, and they're totally out of order. A religious spirit. So what I mean by religious spirit means that they have a form of spirituality but deny the power thereof, as Paul told Timothy. And so the real true spirituality is based on the individual who is obedient. Okay? That's true spirituality, is the person that's obedient. And man, when you see obedience, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to talk. That person's obedient. You just see it. Okay? It's evident for everyone to see. Because she is not obedient, she has to cover herself with spirituality, false spirituality. Well, how do you do that? You talk a good game. You talk Christianese. You talk in flowery language and spiritual language, and you're always talking about how you love Jesus, but yet you don't obey. And so another way of having a religious spirit is they do religious things, right? They do good things. They're at soup kitchens, and they're helping the poor, and they're helping this, and they're helping that. And so they do a lot of social justice types of activities to cover up their lack of obedience to God, because the lack of obedience is glaring, and it's really hard to cover up in their personal lives. So they have to cover it with all this other junk and garbage, which is nothing but spirituality, or religious spirit. So that being the case then, this is either happened to you, it is happening to you, or it will happen to you. And that's why the church of Thyatira is so important for you to understand. It's not just simply the whore of Babylon. The whore of Babylon will come to rest in a person in front of you. That's how bad it is. That's how she weasels into every church. Now, let's make a church application. The reason that a lot of these churches have been taken down is because the environment was already set by a Jezebel spirit years ago in that church that has now made the church woke today. So it's not something that happened overnight. The Jezebel spirit had been working in maybe a decade into the male leadership of the church, platforming herself, getting authority, and making decisions to where now the church is woke. So that's what you have to do when you investigate each church. How did they go woke? Well, look at what happened in their leadership. See what undermined the leadership. Ask those types of questions. Was it a Jezebel spirit? Well, who knows? I don't know. But anyway, what you have to do is identify it. Once it's identified, you must eliminate it. And the only way you can eliminate it is you must get rid of them. You must fire them. You must eventually kick them out of your church. You must kick them out of your Bible study. You must say, we're not the place for you. And you even must do this in your own family. Because the Jezebel spirit is working to manipulate you and destroy you. That's the idea. Now again, I hope you never have to, but I'm just telling you, why would God put this situation in the church of Thyatira if it's not a common occurrence? Well, it is. And that's why it's in one of the 7 churches of Revelation. And this is what must be overcome. You must overcome this. It's not just overcoming the Catholic Church. It's what made the Catholic Church so decrepit. And it was the whore. So you have to overcome the whore. You have to overcome the Jezebel in your personal life, in your office, at your business, at your church. You must overcome her. And then, if you overcome her, then you will be rewarded. So I want to stop there and answer any questions you might have until I get to what he decides to do with her. Okay. Let's get the mics. Hold on.
Okay. Pastor Brandon, Yuri for our online wants to know, can someone repent from this Jezebel spirit, and does it happen?
Yeah, they can repent of it if they recognize what's happening in their own personal lives and why they're doing it. And it comes from a place of, like I said, insecurity. And that insecurity leads them down that path. Now, how do they get down that path? Demonic influence. That's what starts it. So the demons go after people who have unsolved problems in their life. So if a woman has an unsolved problem with men, whether it stems from their father, it stems from a boyfriend, it stems from a cousin, or whatever, a rape or molestation, neglect, whatever it might be, if they're wounded and that wound is not healed, then the demon will take advantage of her wound and manipulate her to use her as in a Jezebel situation, and the person won't even know it's happening to them. But the demon will influence that. I'm not saying take away the person's responsibility. I'm just telling you that's how it starts. It's a demon taking advantage of a wounded individual. That's how it goes. And then it's off that. But yes, people can repent and stop. But typically they don't. I'm not saying they can't. I just haven't witnessed it. Where am I at? Yes.
My question is this. How common, Brandon, is this in female pastors who are head of their church?
Absolutely, it's in the female pastors. That is the clearest sign, doctor, of a Jezebel spirit is a female pastor. That is the clearest sign that that's happened. And look what's going on. Think about this. We left the Southern Baptist Convention, guys, many, many years ago. And I saw this brewing. And that's why we're non-denominational. But what was happening? There was a push for female pastors. What's happening right now in the Southern Baptist? There's a push for female pastors. And some of them are actually becoming female pastors. Rick Warren was all for the other pastor taking over for his wife to become a pastor, didn't he? Yeah, it's a push, but what it really is it's a push of a Jezebel spirit. Now, the problem with the Jezebel spirit in a female pastor is she will eventually produce false doctrine at some point in time. At some point in time, she will. Because, look, you can't say that someone that's out of order. I do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. 1 Timothy chapter 2, 12 through 14. You cannot just violate that and think there's no ramifications for that. You decide to violate that, guess what? You've opened the door for demonic influence and doctrines of demons. At that point, it won't be too long until you see Beth Moore go off the rails. Have you not? Okay, I can trace Beth Moore's history all the way back when Second Houston was allowing her to preach on Sunday night. And I remember being in the Southern Baptist at that point in time. I said, is anyone going to tell Second Houston to stop her from preaching because she's out of order? She's violating 1 Timothy chapter 2. I mean, no one did. So they let her, and what happened? Beth Moore kept going on and taking more and taking more and taking more and taking more to where now she's a false teacher. Okay? She's teaching contemplative prayer. She's teaching all kinds of wackadoo stuff at this point. I think she's charismatic now or something like that. I mean, she's totally out of the Southern Baptist again, or out of that, and now she's went full-blown like Sid Roth type of charismatic stuff. I mean, out there, crazy, off the chart. And then making, and you say, well, what's wrong with what she's doing? Let me just give you one. When you say that bringing in Catholic doctrine is part of salvation, you're wrong. That's a false teaching when she did that. And she said that Jesus included, the Catholic doctrine or whatever. No. The Catholic doctrine is a works-based doctrine. It is Jesus plus the sacraments. You cannot say that religion is faith-based when it's works-based. And she did that. Well, when she did that, that's it. You're denying faith alone. So when you deny faith alone, that's an essential, that's a false teaching. And that's that alone. But there's more. There's more you could give in respect to what she's saying. But she's at this point now, she's taken full Monty on people giving her platforms. And I think she's just totally out of control. I think John MacArthur said it the best about her. You remember what he said? She needs to be quiet, is what he said. That's what he said. That's what he said. You can look it up. John MacArthur said she needs to be quiet. I would agree. She's a false teacher at this point. Okay, I got questions. Where am I at? Yeah, Barbara.
I was going to ask you, I think you kind of started to answer that, but I was going to ask you to expound on one of your last comments was, how did it start in the Catholic Church and then grow?
Yeah, it started, obviously the Catholic Church, what you're looking at today is a little bit different than what started in 600 AD, but there's where the nucleus of the Catholic Church today is about 600. So what happened before that is you had the Church of Pergamum, that era of church history, and Babylon, or the whore of Babylon, made its way through Pergamum into the church. And so it embryonically started there with a compromise. And maybe I said it in the spring, this is how the movement happened. So Babylon itself had the Babylonian mystery cults. You guys remember that, right? And it was all centered in Babylon. It goes all the way back to Nimrod, right? So the Babylon mystery cults were there. And then, as you recall in history, when Daniel and the children of Israel are sent into exile into Babylon, Medo-Persia then takes over while they're there. Remember that? And obviously, Cyrus the Great was there, Darius and all them are there. But what ends up happening when the Medes and Persians take over Babylon, the Babylonian cult religion moved. They didn't stay there. They got out of Dodge. And they ended up moving into Asia Minor, which we now call Turkey. And they actually centered into the area of Pergamum. And then, obviously in the churches of Revelation, Pergamum is mentioned. And Jesus says where Satan has his throne. So it indicates that Satan's throne has moved from Babylon to Pergamum. It moved to Asia Minor. Because he says that's where the church is, where Satan has his throne. Now, where Satan's throne is today, I'm not sure. I know eventually it will be back in Babylon one day. That's where Satan will have his throne. I don't know where it's at right now. It could be in, Washington, D.C. is probably the best theory out there, right? Washington, D.C., right smack dab right there on the White House, right? Satan's throne. But anyway, so it infiltrated the church, and then in church history, in the era of Pergamum, you start getting these compromises. And what ended up happening is, over the years, these compromises turned into doctrines. And these doctrines turned into now official Catholic teaching. And by the time Augustine's in place, I mean, he's codifying certain things in church history that we would shake our heads and say, I don't know where you got that from, dude. He started pulling from Gnostic Manichaeanism. He started bringing in fatalism, saying that the kingdom is spiritual, not a physical kingdom. And there was no challenges really to Augustine, so Augustine's teachings got championed in the Catholic Church. And just even before that, man, you started having all kinds of weird stuff, prayer beads, prayers for the dead, all kinds of weird stuff was infiltrating into the church. And then somehow I shouldn't say just somehow, but the church leaders allowed it and sanctified it and set it apart and said, yes, this is what we're doing here. And we would all shake our heads and say, well, you can't just say that. Well, probably some of them weren't even saved, some of these popes and bishops and stuff like that. I mean, after a while, when you married the church with the state, You had people in the Catholic Church that weren't even saved, or really in the Church Universal, because when you had the wedding of the church and state, in order to be a member of the state, you had to be a member of the church. And so you had all these pagans coming in with their own junk, and it just diffused everything. And so things like that develop. Something stupid, for instance, I'll give you an example, like infant baptism. Where did that come from, you know? And it came from something really stupid. And I know this is going to sound like bizarre, but this is how it developed into a doctrine. So they come up with this idea that, you know, people have original sin, and if a baby dies before being baptized, then the baby's going to go to limbo, right? Have you heard that before in Catholic theology? So the baby dies, going to go to limbo. Well, the moms were like, we don't want our babies going to limbo. So we're asking and petitioning the church to baptize our babies. So guess what? They caved into the moms asking to be baptized babies before they baptized you as an adult. So they started baptizing babies, but the mode of baptism, which was carried on from the early church, was what? Immersion. So guess what? You want your baby to be baptized, what did the priest have to do? He dunked your baby underwater. Well, the mamas didn't like that. And they petitioned, and so what did they ask for? Can't you just simply sprinkle them instead of dunking them? Sure, no problem. So because of mothers' requests to have their babies baptized and then not to have them dunked, came infant baptism by sprinkling, or we call in theology pedobaptism. And you're thinking, that wasn't because some dude read a passage and said, you know, that's teaching that Cornelius' family was all baptized, and so it includes the kid. No one was making that argument. They were saying, we got to cave into the pressures of the whims of the people. And so in church history, you'll see doctrines emerge that are just simply ridiculous because of human pressure on the church itself. Now think about this. Is that any different than what happens today? The church puts pressure on the pastor. Hey, you need to be woke. You need to be about this. And what does the church do? Caves in. Right? It's the same thing. And it's not because some guy's reading some highfalutin theology. It's because he's getting pressure from people. So it's just weird stuff like that, Barbara. And you shake your head and you're like, oh, that's awful. Where did that come? But yet, I grew up Catholic, and we never questioned that. Right? That this is what the priest said, so we're just going to do it. But then when you get to the root of it, and we're like, well, that's stupid. Where did you get that at? But in Catholicism, you're never taught to question. You're never supposed to question, right? My priest always said, when I questioned him, I would just rather have a beer with you, man. Okay. But that's how they roll. They didn't want to talk theology. So, Barbara, that's a long answer, but it's crazy. I'm glad I'm out of it. Okay, any other questions about Jezebel? We all good? All right. Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Let's get a mic for her.
I'm going to embarrass myself. What if you recognize some of the traits, okay?
Yeah.
But yet balance that, like with Sunday service, about using doing what God is calling you to do. There has to be a balance.
There is, and what you would have to do some introspection. A Jezebel spirit, I can tell you this, is not doing any introspection at all. They're on an agenda for control. Versus someone that has good leadership qualities. Well, yeah, but here's what a good leader would do. They would see their flaws, like, hey, man, sometimes I'm a perfectionist, and I can't expect that out of people or whatever. I need to back off on that. So they know their own flaws, but they're still a good leader. But a good leader knows that I know my flaws, I know my weaknesses, and I have no problem submitting to authority. Jezebel does not like submitting to anyone's authority at all. And so good leaders, just like in an army or anything, they say, okay, as a colonel, I submit to that leadership, and they come under it. They have no problem doing it. And another thing about a good mark about a leader is just like with the talent thing on Sunday, they're faithful in the few things. You can trust them with a little, and they have no problem. What's the problem with Jezebel? She doesn't like the little things. She wants the top. instantaneously. And she will not, if you tell a Jezebel spirit, go clean the bathrooms, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Go work in the back room where no one sees you for the next 5 years. Go work in the back room. Now, there's some people that are good servants and say, that's perfect for me, man. I'm a behind-the-scenes person. Okay? There's a lot of people like that's actually a good spirit because they don't want to be vaulted. But you tell a Jezebel spirit, you're going to be in the back room for the next 5 years, they ain't going to do it. They ain't going to do it. When someone, they'll come and they want the pole vault all the way to the top, I'll say, you know what? That's great that you want to serve and everything, and that's wonderful. But I said, you know what I really need? I need this to happen. And I'll usually do a small little thing and say, I need you to show up on Sunday morning and help us set up in the morning the chairs in the auditorium. That pretty much eliminates Jezebels because they won't do it. They won't do it. They won't do it. And so my thing is, she has no introspection. She doesn't see her weaknesses, but it started because of unsolved wounds in her. And she's turned into, now here's the thing, and that's an application for all of us. These wounds that we have from life, and we all have them, if you don't resolve them, if you don't work on them and process them with truth, that wound will be capitalized by demons, and they will take full advantage of that and use that against you. So, ultimate combination. So let me talk to the men, since we've been hammering a Jezebel woman. So men, the reason you can be manipulated so easy by a Jezebel spirit and not even know it's happening to you is because you haven't worked on your rejection issues. And because you haven't worked on your rejection issues, anytime a woman tries to manipulate you, you will fall for it. You will not see it. Because the ultimate that you want is love and acceptance, and Jezebel knows how to play right into that. That's why so many men fall into the temptation of a Jezebel spirit, is because they are so good at it. And they suck the guy in through flattery, through manipulation, through gifts, through all kinds of stuff that he's wanting because he has a rejection attitude. So it cuts both ways, right? It cuts both ways. So my thing is, let's just all work on our junk so it doesn't happen to us, okay? That's the real basis of it all, male or female, because this is a very dangerous thing because it's demonically controlled. That's the danger of it. Okay, we got all the questions satisfied. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back, okay? Let's get rolling here. We have some current events we're going to talk about for the remaining time. I hope you guys got your dinner. Thank you, Terry, for cooking. Appreciate that. All right. What I want to bring to our attention tonight is I want to take a look at what's happening in Europe and what's happening here in America. And I think we have an elite ruling class that's aiming at free speech, and I think we need to pay attention to this because it's growing. We're seeing things on the news happen that is pretty scary. About free speech and where they're going with this, and so I want to tackle this a little bit tonight. So you probably have heard that this guy Pavel Durov was arrested in France as he was flying in, and they arrested him because he is the platform owner of Telegram. And some of you are using Telegram. I don't know, but if you are, it is an encrypted service that he created to prevent Big Brother from looking at what you're writing and preventing other agencies from snooping in. So everything that you write on Telegram is encrypted. Well, the French don't like that, and the Europeans don't like that, and because you could probably understand why. They probably want to know what you're writing on Telegram and what's happening. And their excuse will always be, well, we have terrorists that are using Telegram, and we have seditionists, and we have crazy people that we want to monitor, and your platform doesn't allow us to be able to see what terrorists are doing, and therefore submit your platform to us, the EU, and so we can see what everyone's doing. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. Not doing that. And so this has been a long battle. They're going to go after Elon, as you probably know. And I think it's important to watch this because this is going to come down to us, okay? It's going to come down to you and me. It's going to come down to our platforms for our church. It's going to come down to your platforms that you personally use. So this is going to have far-reaching effects because you think, well, that's some dude that's in Telegram. I don't even use Telegram. No, it's not just Telegram. They're coming for all of it, is the idea, okay? And what I want you to see is what they're trying to do to this guy, okay? So he's targeted, so he was detained, and he is detained by the National Anti-Fraud Office there in France over alleged facilitation, now notice what it says, facilitation of various crimes including terrorism, narcotics, trafficking, and fraud. Now, this guy hasn't done anything. He just owns the platform, okay? But again, I want you to see what they're labeling as, that he's facilitating these things. That's why we're arresting you, okay? They further accuse him of allowing an incalculable number of offenses and crimes to be committed on Telegram, for which he did nothing. They say you should have done something to these people who were doing this. In short, they are charging Durov as an accomplice to the crimes others have committed while using his app. Again, notice an accomplice to the crimes by people using the app, and the app is for free speech, and it's encrypted to protect people who are trying to communicate. So I want you to see the principle here. If they can go forward with this in the EU or bring this to the West and say, hey, look, Elon Musk, Rumble, Telegram, whatever, Facebook, whatever, Mark Zuckerberg, all these other things, if you guys can be charged and put in jail, we'll put you in jail for being an accomplice to the crimes that are happening, that are perpetrated on Telegram, Facebook, whatever platform, Rumble, YouTube, whatever. What do you think these guys are going to do? Okay? What does that mean for your freedom of speech? Okay? So the Paris prosecutor's office said Durov was detained as part of an investigation into whether platforms are enabling online criminality, including the exchange of child pornography, drug trafficking, the sale of unauthorized encryption software. Investigators are examining whether online platforms are breaking French law by refusing to cooperate with authorities in countering illegal content. Okay, so they're going to say, look, you're an accomplice to child pornography. You're an accomplice to drug trafficking, whatever it is, okay? So that's how they're going to take people down, is charge them with these things, okay? And this is pretty scary, because that means that any platform owner, especially in the EU, can be charged with this, and then criminal charges be brought, and they put in jail. And so these guys, again, they're super wealthy, they're techno giants, but now the governments of the world don't like their activity. And what is the one thing they don't like? They're going to tell you, well, we just don't like the child pornography, and you guys are child pornographers, accomplices to that. No, what is it that they don't like? Free speech. And they definitely don't like the fact that they can't read it when it's encrypted. Okay? That's the problem. Okay, and so they're going to say, well, you're involved in child pornography and all this other stuff. That is a red herring. That's not what the issue is. It's free speech is what the EU doesn't like. So as you know, Telegram uses encryption, and on purpose. Okay, and look, in a world of free speech in which we come from, not the European countries, but in our world. We understand that there could be people saying things that we disagree with. That's the nature of free speech, okay? That we may not like what someone says, but we have to allow that. Unless someone, there's rules for what you can and cannot say, obviously, and even in our free speech world. But in Europe, they don't have this mentality. It's whatever the government deems okay to say at the time. Okay? It's not like a law that continues on, and it's just whatever is relevant to the time. So that's why in Europe right now, with a lot of the Muslim immigration, they won't even call it Muslim immigration. They'll just call them Asians. Yeah, Asians. They're Asians. They're not Asian. I don't know why you would even say that. But this is their woke mentality of not to call a jihadi or a Muslim from Sudan or Iran or Somalia or whatever. We're just going to call them Asian immigrants. What? I mean, it's just crazy, right? So even in Europe, they can't call it for what it is. Okay? They have a major problem. They have a demographic problem in Europe, and the demographic is Muslim. I'm sorry, that's what it is. And when you let that happen to your country and Muslims take over, they bring their Muslim culture with them, and they invade with their Muslim. They're not assimilating. They're not doing that. They're bringing dominance of Sharia law to Europe, and Europe's being lost because they have these crazy leftist liberals running their country thinking Europe doesn't have a culture, and so who are we to say anything to this Muslim culture? And basically it turns into a rape culture, and we're just going to let this happen. But anyway, we're going to get on Telegram because Telegram's telling the truth, and we don't like them doing that and inciting people. So this is what a lot of people are getting charged with incitement in Europe about. So anyway, what we find out, and the Wall Street Journal had this article, that he was wooed and targeted by governments for a long time, and especially France. France was trying to woo him to come under their umbrella so that they could control what was happening, and he just kept pushing back, and so finally they just arrested him. Okay, you don't want to play ball? You want to come under us and you want to work with us like Mark Zuckerberg works with the Biden administration or the Obama administration? You don't want to be like that? Then we'll arrest you, right? And so it ends up, he got targeted by the very government that tried to work with him 6 years ago with Telegram. They knew he was creating an encrypted program, and they tried to woo him. And he said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm for free speech or whatever. So what's happening with Europe, and you need to pay attention to this because it's going to come here to the United States because we have a lot of our politicians that love what Europe does, especially in the area of free speech. So what we're seeing is Europe is becoming the epicenter for destroying free speech in the West. And it's permeating all through Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand. All of the West is getting what these Europeans are doing about free speech. It's already happening, okay? So this is what you need to pay attention to as far as understanding Europe. They have what's called the Digital Service Act. They try to push this on Elon Musk. And you probably read what he told them to do. But this came, and you can go to the European Commission and read this and everything, all you want. It's there. It came in about 2022. And it was intended to target free speech because they don't look at free speech like you and I do. They don't value it. Okay? They see it as misinformation, disinformation. It doesn't fit the narrative, whatever. They got to stop that. And so basically this Digital Service Act empowers globalist EU governments to censor any speech that they see fit. And so that's what's been going on in the last few weeks in Europe as they're targeting people and arresting people for what they say on social media, saying you're inciting violence, you're inciting riots against Muslims, you're homophobic, you're Islamophobic, and so we're going to arrest you. And that is what's going on. And so one of these guys, this is the EU International Market Commissioner, Thierry Breton. I think I've already exposed you to him with Elon Musk, but I mean, this is what the guy says. Is he goes, with the DSA, the time of big online platforms behaving like they are too big to care is coming to an end. And so the EU is in full swing to target all the platforms right now, including Elon Musk and whatever. So there's a big war happening right now. And then there's another creepazoid, as I call them, that hates free speech. This is the EU Commission Vice President Margrethe Vestager added that with today's agreement, this is back in 2022, we ensure that platforms are held accountable for the risk their services can pose to society and citizens. And what you need to translate that is, I don't like free speech. I don't like the risk involved that it poses. So they're basically demonizing free speech. And so they want to control what everyone says. Okay. So as an example of this ongoing war with the platforms, the EU accuses Elon Musk X of misleading users. So here's what the EU tries to impose. They try to impose a fine of X up to 6% of its global annual turnover. Now you think, what's 6%? No, it's 6% of billions of dollars. So that's a lot of money. And basically telling, look, if you don't comply, Elon, with our ways and this commission thing, that these laws that we have put in order, you can't use. We're not going to let you use X in Europe. Okay. And that's what they're going to do with all these platforms. They're just going to say, because of this new law, you cannot use your platform in Europe. They're just going to cut them off from the European market. Basically, that's what the Europeans are doing, okay? But please understand that people on the left here in America love this idea. This is their way of being able to finally censor. They could not stand when Elon Musk bought Twitter. They could not take that because he's for free speech. And Twitter was what they were writing. That Twitter was the controlling of the narrative, right? And so they want to impose these fines on him. And, Elon Musk is a squirrely guy. There's no doubt about that. He's a genius. There's no doubt about that. He's the second richest guy on the planet. But they're targeting him. They don't like him. And I'm watching this play out, and I don't like what I see, because when the elites are for power, they'll try to take guys out like this. They'll do anything that, if they have to put him in jail. I mean, you already saw it with Trump. So, in many ways, I feel bad because he's going to be targeted by them. He already is. This is NPR. Not that I get really my news from NPR, but I wanted to show you what the other side is saying, because NPR is crazy. And they should be defunded, by the way. So I'm not supporting NPR. I just want to show you what they say on their platforms. So this is an NPR article. And they said the need to regulate big tech more effectively came into sharper focus. And look at the lies. After the 2016 U.S. presidential election, when Russia used social media platforms to try to influence voters. That's a lie. That didn't happen. Okay, NPR, we're publicly funding you. And then they said this. Tech companies like Facebook and Twitter promised to crack down on disinformation, but the problems have only worsened. Actually, no, Facebook and Twitter were helping the situation on your side. I don't know what you're talking about. During the pandemic, health misinformation blossomed. And again, the companies were slow to act, cracking down after years of allowing anti-vaccine falsehoods to thrive on their platforms. I mean, that's crazy, right? That's why you don't get your news from NPR, right? But again, I want to show you that's what the other side says and thinks and believes. Now, that's useful idiot stuff right there. Like, that's not true. None of that's true, right? But again, they love the idea of targeting big tech because of all that disinformation about the vaccines or whatever it might be, and Russia interference, Russia, and whatever. So one guy I do like, Jonathan Turley, he's a law professor at George Washington University. He says that Digital Securities Act is one of the greatest threats to free speech that we have had today around the world, forcing social media companies to flag and report content that the EU deems harmful. So this is a big concern of his, and when you hear Jonathan Turley say that, you need to pay attention to this, because this kind of stuff is going to bleed into the United States. It's already bleeding into Canada, right? So here's some examples of what I'm talking about. So Google admits to changing search results for more Trump assassination searches and much more. They admit it. I don't know why they would admit it. I think there's a false flag being flown right now, saying, you know what, yeah, sorry. Because I don't know about you. I don't think Google is having a come to Jesus moment right now. And they're like, we repent, and that we're so sorry. I cannot believe we did that. I don't know what we're thinking. So when they come out with an admission that, hey, we changed the search results, sorry. Do they think I'm stupid? Do they think you're stupid? Because I don't believe it. I mean, I think they do. They think that the general population they think are stupid and will believe anything they say. Well, we came out and said, sorry, we messed up. We won't do it again. Really, I guarantee you'll do it more, and you'll double down on it even more, because I know what Google's up to. I know what they want. I know what their agenda is. So I think this is a false flag. I think this is a fake, I'm sorry, but we're going to continue to do what we're going to do. And we're going to work with the EU, and we're going to work with all these other creeps that want to silence free speech, because we're not going to allow Donald Trump to get in there. That's really, I think, what's going on here, right? It's a false apology. And then the best crocodile tear guy I've seen lately is Zuckerberg. And so, hey, if you're that stupid out there to think, you know what, he turned over a new leaf, Brandon, you're getting too hard on the guy. He really is a good guy, and he wants to help now. So back off, Brandon. He admitted to three things: that the Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. Okay, so he threw them under the bus. That the FBI had knowledge that the Hunter Biden laptop was real prior to December 2019, long before she had published a story about it in October 2020. Facebook censored Americans. He admitted to that. And then he admitted that Facebook censored the Hunter Biden laptop story due to the FBI pressure. So he admitted that. The FBI was putting pressure on him and all this other stuff. Now, again, I think this is a false flag. I think it's a fake apology. I think Zuckerberg is working in tandem with what's going on. And this is like a false apology to Jim Jordan. So here's I pulled this up. This is the apology that he read to Jim Jordan in front of Congress. And I just want you to go through it just so you can see it and hear it and try to understand what he's saying. I appreciate the committee's interest in content moderation on online platforms. As you are aware, Meta has produced thousands of documents as part of your investigation, and made a dozen employees available to transcribe interviews. I'm an open book, he's saying. I have nothing to hide. Hey. Further to our cooperation with your investigation, I welcome the opportunity to share what I've taken away from this process. So, hey, I'm on your side, guys. So, I mean, it's just a joke, right? There's a lot of talk right now around how the U.S. government interacts with companies like Meta, and I want to be clear about our position. Really, what is it? Our platforms are for everybody. Really, they're for everybody, huh? Are they for Donald Trump? We're about promoting speech. No, you're not. You're about censoring speech and helping people connect in a safe and secure way. No, you're not. As part of this, we regularly hear from governments around the world and other various concerns around public discourse and public safety. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. I doubt that. There was probably no disagreement. I doubt that. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take the content down, and we own our decisions. I don't really believe that. I believe the pressure was real, and they did it, including COVID-19 related charges we made to our enforcement in the wake of this pressure. And we know that was all a lie, right? And YouTube to this very day will still take your presentation down about it, okay? Even though it's all come out. I believe the government pressure was wrong, okay? And I regret that we're not more outspoken about it. I also think we made some choices that, with the benefit of hindsight and new information, we wouldn't make today. Like I said to our teams at the time, I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to the pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. Wow, it's amazing, man. He's a political born again. Just amazing. Amazing how this guy is just so open and honest. In a separate situation, the FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting corruption allegations involving then Democratic President nominee Joe Biden's family, we sent the story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it while waiting for a reply. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. I wonder why they threw Biden under the bus. We've changed our policy and process to make sure this doesn't happen again. For instance, we no longer temporarily demote things in the U.S. while waiting for fact checkers. So you tell me this. I mean, you're a smart individual. You're not like the knuckle draggers out in the rest of the world that believe in Mark Zuckerberg, because I don't. What is he doing here? Okay, what's happening? What's going on behind the scenes? If you can use the wisdom that you have from the Bible and you're as wise as a serpent, what do you think's going on here? So we're going to apologize. It's a fake apology, but we're going to continue to do the same thing over again. It's just total manipulation. You're totally right. And I hate to say this. There's too many people out there that have stopped using their brain. They're not dumb. They just don't listen anymore. They're not looking at information, and that's the kind of people they manipulate. I know you're not like that, and we're not like that. And like none of us would buy that. We're like, the guy's not apologizing for anything. He's a liar. That's who Mark Zuckerberg is. He's a liar. But you got to remember, the general population doesn't think like you do. They're not fact-checking. They just hear it, and they go with it. And that's been proven over and over again, okay? And so it's a fake apology. They're going to continue to do the same thing. And I think what you realize is that behind the scenes, they're all cooperating with each other. And this is window dressing. You go out there and apologize to Jim Jordan. He's their bulldog. Satisfy him. Do your crocodile tears, and then we're going to be back to normal right when you get back. So don't worry about it. You're working with us. Okay? Again, go back to Telegram. That they already wanted him to work with the French and EU government, and he wouldn't comply. And what I'm telling you is, Mark Zuckerberg is complying. He's going with them. That's why they're leaving him alone. So he realizes if he doesn't work with them, he's going to get targeted just like this other guy for Telegram, just like Elon Musk is getting targeted. And so Mark Zuckerberg is saying, I'm going to cut a deal with you guys. We'll pretend that our platform is free for free speech, but I will work the algorithms as you tell me to work them. Thank you very much. Just don't put me in jail. Because I'm a multi-billionaire, and I don't want to go to jail as a multi-billionaire. So he's going to save his own skin. That's what this is about. So apart from the content moderation, I want to address the contributions I made during the last presidential cycle to support electoral infrastructure. No, that was called Zuckerbucks. Remember that? The Zuckerbucks? The idea here was to make sure the local election jurisdictions across the country had the resources they needed to help people vote safely during a global pandemic. The funny is, you put all the money in markets that voted Democrat in certain urban cities. That's where you put all the money at. You didn't put it in. You didn't put the infrastructure in any conservative areas. You put them all in Democratic zero zones, man. I mean, it was just total. You could see it from the outset. And you sunk millions of it in there. And these contributions to the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, they were designed to be nonpartisan, yeah, right, spread across urban, rural, and suburban communities. They're not. They were mainly Democratic, urban. Still, despite the analysis I've seen showing otherwise, I know that some people believe this work benefited one party over the other. It's true. But, you know, guys, I'm coming to Jesus, so my goal is to be neutral. I repent and not play a role in one way or the other, or even appear to be playing a role, so I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. And I want to say, liar, liar, your pants is on fire. Okay? That's what you have to understand. If you buy that, I got oceanfront property, as George Strait says, in Arizona. What's the song say? Oceanfront property in Arizona, right? If you believe this, then you're going to believe George Strait when he says, I got oceanfront property in Arizona. This is ridiculous. Okay, so what's happening? France isn't targeting Zuckerberg. I wonder why. Why isn't France targeting Zuckerberg? He's cutting the deal. He's cut a deal with them, okay? Why are they not saying he's enabling child pornography on Facebook? Why is there a double standard? Why are you going after Durov and not Zuckerberg? You see what I'm saying? One guy's cutting the deal, the other one's not. Now this is serious business at this level, man, because it's going to filter into us, okay? So this guy's going to go get backed off because the New Mexico Attorney General is accusing Meta of being a breeding ground for child predators in a new lawsuit. So New Mexico's Attorney General is accusing Meta and its CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, of enabling child sex abuse and trafficking on its sites. According to the Attorney General, undercover investigation, Facebook and Instagram's algorithms created a marketplace for the sexual exploitation of children, and Meta enabled adults to find, message, and groom minors, soliciting them to sell pictures or participate in pornographic videos. Let me tell you this. This will die the death of a rag doll since Mark Zuckerberg has decided to cooperate with the deep state. Okay, it's not going anywhere, okay? So this guy, this New Mexico Attorney General, he's going to have a call and say, stand down, he's on our side, he's cool, don't worry about it. But this is what I'm talking about. They will bring accusations against people like this. Elon Musk will be next. He's promoting child trafficking, pornography. And look, when the people out there that are low information, okay, and they hear in some soundbite, well, Elon Musk is supporting pornography for children. That's all they hear. They'll hear CNN say that, MSLSD say that or whatever, and they just hear that, and they don't fact check the thing, and they just go with it. Well, that's that child pornography stuff. All those guys are bad. And they don't want that. Elon Musk won't want that. So this is a big deal. So here's Rumble. Okay, we're on Rumble. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. It's going to affect us. So Rumble, he's the next guy probably going to get targeted. So Rumble founder CEO Chris Pavlovsky said, "I'm a little late to this, but for good reason. I've just safely departed from Europe." Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Get out of there while you can. France has threatened Rumble. So he's even said France has come after Rumble. And now they have crossed a red line by arresting Telegram CEO Pavel Durov, reportedly for not censoring speech. And he goes, Rumble will not stand for this behavior and will use every legal means available to fight for freedom of expression, a universal human right, Pavlovsky added. We are currently fighting in the courts of France, and we hope for Pavel Durov's immediate release. So what I'm saying is, he's already indicating they're coming after him too. And it's all coming out of Europe, okay? It's France, and okay, you can say it's Macron, but it's really the EU coming after this. Here's Elon Musk's post. It is vital to the support of free speech that you forward X posts to people you know, especially in censorship-heavy countries. So what's getting ready to happen, if you interpret what Elon Musk is trying to say, is that the EU is so bad that the only way, if they censor X, the only way you would ever get something from X is if someone forwards it to you. But you're not going to be able to search for it. It would have to be forwarded to you, is what he's trying to say in Europe. So again, he's trying to put it out there saying, wake up, people. And I'm glad 36 million views had got that post. I'm glad for that, because everyone needs to understand what's at stake here. If they go after the social medias and shut the social medias down, especially in an election cycle like this, you won't know what the real story is on anything. The algorithms will change everything, you know? Okay. So then this guy pops up. This is Alexander Vidman. And he is, interesting enough, a Democratic candidate who was a key witness against Donald Trump in his first impeachment trial, by the way. And he says, let's see, while Durov holds French citizenship, is arrested for violating French law, this has broader implications for other social media, including Twitter. So he's aiming right at Elon. There's a growing intolerance for platforming disinformation and malignant or influence, malign influence or whatever, and a growing appetite for accountability. Musk should be nervous. So that's a threat to Elon. And so this guy, again, you know, he's a Democratic candidate, but again, here's the question then. Why is a Democratic candidate threatening Elon Musk, who is an American? I think he has American citizenship, right? So why should Elon be nervous about France's censorship? And he's an American. Because it's coming here. That's what the guy's signaling. That we want it here too for him and for all the platforms. Again, he's just one guy, but I'm telling you, the whole Democratic National Convention is on this ticket. They all want it censored because, look, the greatest thing that threatens the Democratic National Convention is the truth. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. I mean, there's nothing on that platform that's godly. Nothing. And you go to the place, and we talked about it last week, you go to the place and you get a vasectomy and an abortion right in front of the DNC. I mean, come on. And you're surrounded by 170 radical Islamic terrorist watch groups or whatever that you allowed to have? I mean, we know what you're about. So they're telling, you know, Musk, you should be nervous because we're coming after you too. And if we have to pin the tail on the donkey and say, well, you're contributing to child porn, you're doing this, we'll get you too. As an American citizen? You get what I'm saying? So it's coming here is the idea, okay? The only thing that's saving them right now in America is the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act that protects social media companies from being charged as accomplices to most crimes committed on their platforms, okay? So this is a United States law, not a French law or European law. So this is protecting Elon Musk, okay? This would have protected this guy, Pavlov or whatever his name is, if he was an American citizen, but he's not. And though French and European law doesn't fall under Section 230, their double standard for platforms that comply with their censorship campaigns is clear. So this is what's saving the platforms right now in America, is this law right here. if the Democratic Party goes after repealing this law or taking it away or whatever they're wanting to do, change it, whatever, I don't know, then all of a sudden, all these platform guys become vulnerable at that point in time, just like what these other countries are doing to them. So this is something to pay attention to, is this Section 230 on Communications of Decency Act. Anyway, let's talk about this from a biblical standpoint, because we're running out of time, though. So let's bring it together. So you understand on a personal level, this threatens free speech on your part to use social media. So if we have another shutdown, another lockdown, another virus, another vaccine, or whatever they come up with, the social media outlets are already doing their deals. And you're not going to be able to share it. You're not going to get the information or whatever it is, okay? So on a personal level, you're going to be cut off from information. So my thing to you on a personal level is you better figure out where to get your information from now. You better know how to tap into that. Because if you're going to think that in the next few years you're going to be doing searches on Google and think you're going to find things, forget it. You're not going to find stories. I do that now. I type in the headline of a story that I know is on a conservative website. I know what the headline is, and it won't pull it up. They will not pull it up. And I have to really dig page after page after page to actually find the story. And it's like on page 10, you know, because it's buried by the algorithm. And I have the title. I have the title, and it won't pull up on Google, right? Not that I use Google as a search engine, but again, my experimentations with it, it's messed up. And then I experiment with AI. You just want to see what it's doing, because I know a lot of people use AI. The AI is spitting out wrong information constantly about what happened. And it's about issues I know. And I said, tell me about this. And it goes, and it's like, wrong. It's totally wrong. Tell me about this. And it just spits out the information, and it's wrong. So the algorithm I already know, like ChatGPT-4, the algorithm is already geared towards misinformation. It's already giving people the wrong information. So the problem is they want people to start thinking that AI is everything, and that AI is where you get all your information. And I can already tell you, it's not telling the right story. It's giving false information. So if they convince the populace that we can get our information from AI, they can control them with the algorithms. That's the problem. Okay, let's move back to Europe. So that's on a personal level, but let's on a biblical level, what's happening? The biblical level, what's happening is the formation of the beast government is happening. And with the beast government, we won't be here for the tribulation, but this Antichrist beast government will control everything. Will control all the information, will control buying and selling. It controls everything. And so the system and the mindset's already being created. So why do I focus in on chess pieces of Europe, the European Union, and Russia? Because the fight right now is between who wins this. And I've already talked to you guys about this, but again, I always want to bring it back to what do we need to be looking for as far as prophecy is concerned. Well, as you know, Daniel predicted the metallic man. There would be 4 Gentile empires over Israel until the second coming. And the interesting one is that 4th empire, the beast empire, which is a conglomerate of previous empires of Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. But then it has iron because it's so strong. But then if you notice, it starts with the legs and thighs, or starts with the torso, but then it goes into the legs and it breaks up into 2. So 2 legs, and that's exactly what happened. Is the Roman Empire broke up into 2 areas. And I've talked to you guys about this before. And so we're in the 2-legged stage of Daniel's metallic man. The next stage that we go to is a global government. So that's the next stage. But right now we're in the 2-legged stage of Daniel's metallic man. The global government will be the feet, partly of iron, partly of clay. I'll talk about that in just a second. But as it stands now, and I've done this before, when the Roman Empire split up, you had Constantinople being the capital, which would be there in Turkey when it broke up, and then the other capital would be in Italy with Rome, okay? And that's how the Roman Empire was divided, and it was split in 2. But as I've showed you before, in the West, it moved from Italy or Rome, and it moved into France, under Charlemagne, and then it moved up to Germany with Otto I, I believe it was, in about 970 AD. So the central power centered around in this German area, or basically Western Europe. That's the western portion. The eastern portion, as you know, when Constantinople fell, the rulers, the princes, the scholars, and everyone else made their way through, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, up into Russia and settled right there in Moscow, in that area of Russia. And so what we see from prophecy is that we're in the two-legged phase, and this is where the metallic man stands. The western leg is right there in Western Europe, and the eastern leg is there in Russia. And guess what we're having a problem with, right? So we know the next stage is globalism. Okay, so then the question then I present to all of us, which of the legs supports globalism? It's the western leg, right? Because the eastern leg is wanting, Russia to come back to its old stature and be the head of the nations, and it's really Russian nationalism, authoritarianism, but it's Russian, okay? It's the western leg that's going global. It's the western leg that wants to curtail free speech. Now, don't get me wrong, Putin curtails free speech. Don't get me wrong there, because all totalitarian regimes curtail free speech. Okay, so don't think he's a nice guy either. He's a bad dude. He's eventually going to invade Israel. But nonetheless, I know who wins, and I know what Western Europe wants. And I'm watching right now what Western Europe is trying to do to free speech. And I already know that Western Europe wins the battle. They get global domination. Something happens to America. Okay, we go off, maybe the rapture, it decimates America, I don't know. Maybe we collapse financially, I don't know. But Western Europe takes the lead in globalism. So the reason I'm focusing you in on Europe is because that's who wins. And if I'm already seeing what they're trying to do, then I already know the inevitable step is going to come to America, to Canada, it's going to come to Austria, all Western society. This mentality of these Europeans. So we're not safe being here in California from Europe. It's going to reach here because it's a global movement, is what I'm trying to say. And it's eventually going to affect us. How much is it going to affect us? I don't know. I do know that's one of the reasons why even in the church platform and even Tip of the Spear platform, we have our own platforms, we have our own apps, so that we are not dependent on these platforms, because Rumble could go down. They could target Rumble. Look what they did. Remember that one company? They started up recently. Parler. You remember Parler? And they start there. I saw a commercial for them actually trying to get back up. But remember what happened to Parler? Totally shut down like overnight, right? And don't forget that. So they can do that to these other guys somehow, some way. Look, these guys are nefarious. No, there's no telling what they can do. They can kill people. Yeah, that's part of it. But they can pay people off. They can say, we won't put you in jail. So they can do all kinds of things. And there's no telling what they did with Zuckerberg. No telling what they did. But, what Elon Musk said, and I showed you this article a couple weeks ago, is that they tried to buy him off. The Europeans tried to buy Elon Musk off, and he said, go pound sand. You're not going to buy me off. But and remember what he said is they tried to buy him off and said that you can continue to advertise as if you're promoting free speech, but hey, you'll be going with the European Commission's rules, which is really not free speech. So he said that they already tried to do that with him. So, there's some really bad stuff happening, and this is not stuff we're making up. It's happening, and it's happening during an election year. And I think on a personal level, what can you do? I think on a personal level, you and I have got to be the ones who distribute the truth out to people who don't know the facts and evidence. The burden's actually going to fall on our shoulders. it's going to, because you already know it, you know they're lying, you know what they're doing, so you're already convinced, but you have to go out and tell other people. And what I mean by that, you've got to tell your family. You got to tell, the people around you, your neighbors, your friends, because it's going to come back on you for the trust. And here's how you're going to outdo the algorithm, okay? This is what the algorithm cannot do. The algorithm has no character, but you do. So when we talk about trusting God, we talk about trusting Him and we don't know how things will play itself out, and we don't know how things will happen, but He says, trust me. Well, what we're trusting is because we don't see what He says is going to happen, we have to trust the character of God for what He says is going to happen, okay? That's how you trust God. You trust His character. Well, then when you bring it onto a personal level, I finally started realizing, okay, the only way we're going to outdo the algorithms is that people are going to trust us because we have good character, and that we're giving them the right information. And we will earn that credibility by having the right character. That when everything is clouded from them and they don't know what's going on, they can go to you and say, hey, tell me what's going on, man, because this is crazy. And you will have the ability to do that. And so I think God will always allow that to happen because truth always wins. Truth always wins. But I think you're going to have to think of it in terms of you have to personalize the truth and be the one that carries the truth. You're going to have to be the one that bears it. And yeah, you're going to get pushback and stuff, but that's something all of us can do in this room. But more than ever, you're going to be the distributor of truth. It's not going to be coming from, they're not going to find newsstands, with newspapers or internet sites that are giving the right information. It's going to have to come from you. And so there's our job. In a world of lies, it's going to come down to you and I and having personal relationships with people and being able to say, that vaccine, that's really going to hurt you. You know that shutdown, that 6 feet distance, that's really not true. And you're going to have to be that kind of guy, right? Or that kind of person. You know what's happening in Israel? They're lying to you. They're not starving people in Israel. Israel is being very kind to the people and feeding them. Hamas is not the good guy. You're going to have to be that person. And I think you can do that. I think all of us can do that. But that's really the challenge as more and more of this is happening. So, anywho, we got to get running. I've taken too much of your time. So, yes, question. Let's do some questions and we'll buzz out of here. We get a mic to you.
A couple years back, you recommended, rather than using Chrome or Google, to use DuckDuck.com. Is that still a viable site?
Yeah, I use DuckDuckGo, and that's a good one. Do not use Google. Please do not use Google. And I would say, anything you can, always try to find encryptions in your internet sites, because everything you do on the internet can and will be used against you at some point in time if they want to. And stuff could be made up. I just tell you this. I mean, there's some really things that are freaking me out right now on the internet. And one of the things is what our staff brought to my attention. And it was me speaking Chinese. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. With my voice in Chinese. Same inflections. They played it for me. Oh my goodness. It wasn't, like some dubbed Bruce Lee movie thing, or whatever, and the mouth wasn't working right with the English and the Chinese language. It was really my mouth. The AI was actually controlling my mouth. And I was speaking Mandarin with my tone, inflection, my voice. It was my voice. And that freaked me out. Absolutely, the AI interpreted it absolutely correctly. But here's what I didn't, so the idea is that we're going to try to use that to speak Spanish, speak Cantonese, or whatever, Mandarin, in other languages. But the opposite is true. they could deep fake you and use that against you. And so there's that knife cuts both ways. Now we're going to try to use it to reach people in other countries by speaking, Mandarin or whatever. We're going to try to do this. It's a new frontier we're going on. But I realize at the same time that can be used against me. And you could see me on a YouTube just, doing something, saying something crazy, and you're going to have to trust my character and say, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Because they can do that, right? That's how scary and technologically it is. Anyway, yeah, man. So it's crazy stuff going on right now. Okay, got a question back there. Yes, let's get her a mic. Let's get a mic to you. Hold on.
How would one even know what one's saying if they're even repeating the words that you're saying in a different language? What if they're saying complete BS?
Well, that's very possible. It's very possible. The apps could definitely to do that. The sources you have to trust. You have to know the sources you're using to trust. And this source that we're using is for churches to get the message out in different languages. But are there a bunch of other sources that could do that you couldn't trust? Absolutely. And so you better know what you're doing on the internet, that's for sure. Yeah, because it can be used against you, no doubt about it. They can do deep fakes with your picture, man. Put your head on someone else and you're committing a crime. There you go, you're arrested. We saw you. We saw you. Here's the video footage of you, and we heard your voice. You're cooked, man. Yeah.
I read the other day that they're talking, some of these people are talking about destroying and cutting the underwater fiber optic line. That the communication between continents would cease to exist.
Yeah.
Is this something that
It's very possible. It's communications lines, and that's people can do that. It's an EMP, and then all of a sudden we're knocked out. There's a lot that they could do to knock civilization off the rocker. So yes, and that's a possibility. It's a real. It's a real possibility. That's why we have been working at Rock Harbor to establish an alternative communication source with the ham radios, and being real close knit. Because I'm going to tell you, if something like that ever goes down, or you have riots in the street, or something starts breaking down, you have an EMP go off and the electricity doesn't work. That's what we're trying to establish at Rock Harbor, is that we can take care of one another during those periods of time. And so I don't want you to freak out. We're ahead of this. We're working on this, and we're one of the few churches that we don't have tinfoil around our head, but we do recognize that there are serious threats like that. And if all Hades broke loose, what would we do? And we're not going to let you fend for yourself. That's for sure. We have done everything we can to try to say we're going to take care of our people. That's why it's important to know the body of Christ and be plugged in. Especially Rock Harbor, because if it goes bad, we'll take care of you. We're set up to take care of you. So anyway, so it's a good point, because those things can happen. You read those books, and I don't know what they're called. You guys know those books, like A Minute After? Something like that. I don't know what the titles are, but they're like that. Like, okay, what happens if an EMP goes off? Boom. In the next 30 days, what happens? Everybody that's on some type of drug to keep them alive dies. The psychotic meds, what happens? Everyone starts going crazy because they can't get their meds. So you have oh man, you don't read that before you go to bed. I guarantee you that. Do not do that. You will freak out, man. Right? And I shouldn't have done that to you tonight, man. It should, because you can't get your meds. What are you going to do? And you might go crazy or something. Like you were running up and down the streets, and you're like, what happened to them? They don't have any psych meds. They had nothing ready for themselves. And we see you running up and down the street. So please get enough medication, at least enough to survive, so you don't go crazy. Because we have no place to put you. We don't have padded rooms or anything if you should go crazy in those situations. Okay, so. Anyway, we got to leave on a light note like that, okay? So anyway, let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for this evening. Thank you for preparing our hearts that we understand the signs of the times. And thank you to know that you're in control, and we got to be responsible with our lives. But ultimately, we can trust you, that you'll guide us through this. We got to follow your lead. We got to stay in tune with you, and you'll see us through until we make it home. And we thank you, Father, for that. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, do we need to pick up tables, or what do we need to do?